the creators of that show receive instantaneous payment when the content is watched. So this is basically, the goal is to provide their creators with real-time insight into the video activity, and it gamifies the world of content discovery for the viewers. Interesting concept. We're going to start off commentary here. I think, Michelle, this seems like a content marketing kind of thing. What are your thoughts around what we're doing here with Web3 powered streaming? Clearly, this connects to Bolt Plus and what we're doing here. So we've all got thoughts on this. But we'll start with you.
Thanks. Yeah, it does. Obviously, some people, not everybody knows that we stream live on Bolt every week. And then when we're not live, the recordings play of our shows. So we're streaming all of the time on the Bolt Plus platform. And weekly, 8 million televisions around the globe. If you have a Hisense TV and you have the Bolt Plus app on it, then you can see our shows. So our potential audience then is a large amount of people for that. Streaming services are a little bit similar in that there are shows on them. Some of them, not necessarily say Netflix, but there are streaming services where there are live channels going on. So it might be news channels, it might be sport channels. There might be, your favorite game. There might be a game show channel where basically they play stuff. And it's kind of a little bit, isn't it, like a TV network. So, in the old days when you used to tune in at 5 o'clock to watch, Price is Right before the news or something like that, then, it's similar to that. So the services that we have now, like we have Netflix, we have Disney, we have Hulu, we have Paramount, we have, name another 10 different services. And people are getting much more choosy about what it is that they pay for and what it is that they watch. I know a number of people in the last, 12 months or so that have gone, we've had 10 streaming services that we pay every month for, and we watch, 2 shows a week on them. And so they're cancelling a lot of the services because it's a waste of money. So what they're talking about in this article, and the types of things that Bolt Plus are doing, is that people are able to follow streamers or, television shows or, game shows that are on these particular networks. And they are able to interact with the cast, with the people. They are able to give them, shout outs. And, in the case of Bolt, you're able to send them Bolt token as rewards. And what you can do then is, with regards to Bolt and other Web3 platforms, you connect with your wallet, and then the people themselves can actually send you tokens to say, thanks for joining. Here's a 10%, 25% discount on my services, etc. So it's becoming a Web3 provides, and blockchain provides the opportunity for a much more two-way street. Current streaming services like Netflix and Discovery and all of those, you sit in your couch and you press the button and you just flip channels, and that's it. It's very passive. This, the advent of putting these things on the blockchain and using Web3 tools enables it to be a much more of a two-way street.
Mike, what are your thoughts around this? Good, bad, future?
Do you guys remember Mikey Pirro from CEX in Phoenix?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Mikey came out with a platform called 2 Cents. Okay. It's a podcast produced platform where it allows listeners to directly interact within the podcast, right? So they would connect their wallet. They would obviously get rewarded with tokens for listening to the content. But one of the more unique aspects of it was, no matter at what stage of the podcast it was, obviously pre-recorded, people would be able to post a comment, either an audio or a written comment at specific timestamps within the podcast. And the content creators would get notified of those comments and therefore be able to respond when they obviously have time. And the more people would comment, the more reward tokens they would receive. It was a brilliant, brilliant model. I don't know where it ended up, but how many times do you find yourself listening to a show, kind of immersing yourself in the conversation and wishing that you can bring up a valid point, right?
Talking to the TV.
Most times on this podcast, I never get a word in.
Most of the time in the car, I'm just yelling at myself at a stoplight because I'm listening to something that either I don't agree with or, they're missing a key fundamental piece. Well, this allows direct user engagement within the show. Now, obviously not everything is relative, and that's where the content creators would be able to kind of help weed that out. And I'm sure there's going to be other technologies that can assist with that. But this is really where all of that content creation and that content marketing economy is going to head, because it's not just, like you said, Michelle, this one-way street where we produce, we create, and we send it back at you. One of the real benefits that we've had on this show in trying to find the platforms that were suitable to what our goals are the ability to interact with people live while we're on the show. Right. Yeah. This is nothing different. Now, this is using a very standard Web 2 format, but there's going to be improvements later on where we can initiate anything on chain to help, enhance that experience from the user perspective.
Totally agree. So one of the tenets of sales 101 is it's more important for the prospect to feel understood than that they understand what you're saying. And my point is that in this dynamic, Mike, when you're yelling at the podcast or whatever, the radio, and you can engage and then you can get your 2 cents in, that is such a hook for business. People want to do this. People want to have their opinion heard. I think anything that lets people do it is a win. The pro, as I see it, is community building, right? It's going to be much easier to build community. You as the creator know who your people are. The people who are your people feel like they're your people when they can talk to you. But the con, my opinion, potential for an AI-driven cash grab, right? I can create an avatar that's just going to be my podcast guy that gets me money because there's somehow tokenization in this whole thing. I don't see that happening right now, but I think that initially we're going to get community drivers. This is just like crypto. Then you're going to get the AI bros, and then eventually you're going to get the interactive back and forth of a podcast where you're part of the community.
I think in any scenario, there's going to be opportunity to exploit the system, right? We saw that with NFTs. Like bots are usually the ones that are minting, right? So they formulate these wallets and they just put enough in there for gas just to try to execute these transactions. Nobody's really pulling the trigger on making that work, right? So like that's one of the I guess fundamental flaws behind blockchain about users having the ability to interact and directly engage with a specific transaction. But there's also safeguards in place that can assist with that. There's 2FA protocols that you can have that bots, very rarely have the ability to authenticate, especially in real time. So, there are workarounds to some of these hurdles.
Lost Mike there for a second. I've got some show and tell. Michelle, you'll love this. In 2002, I used to broadcast from the floor of the trading floor where I worked. Instinet was the company that's still around. If you know what this is, I have videotape of me from broadcasting commentary to 30 million households in Asia. That was CNBC that ran that, obviously, their television station. Today, we go to 8 million households over Bolt. Right now, we're doing it as we speak. Yes. From your basement, basically, right? It's amazing what this technology allows, and the ability to build an expensive
studio, do we?
No more expensive studio, but I now can create fan base for myself on other continents, and not just in terms of the internet distribution, in terms of real-time live interaction. It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, Mike, we lost your sound there for a minute. That's why we.
We lost your sound, Mike. It was the highlight of the podcast, but if you want to repeat it.
No, I think it was mostly fluff. So I'll let you get a couple words in, Mark.
So one of the things I was going to say was that platforms like Bolt Plus allows us is that we can also see our viewers' names. So when people have an account on the app and then they leave comments or they interact with us during the show, and we quite often will either talk about what they've said or we respond to them in the typing in the chat. But it also allows us to actually see the names of the people that regularly follow us, that regularly join us, that regularly comment. So by keeping a record of that, for example, as the content creators, as the owners of the program, we could send, you could say to, Linda Ray or Jamal or, one of the guys that turns up every week, you can say after 10 weeks, well, here's an extra special bonus because for 10 weeks in a row, you turned up and watched the show. So there's all those opportunities which you do not get from the standard television streaming format. And I know that, things like the example in the article, and I've put that in the chat as well. And with regards to Bolt, they're evolving over time and creating more and more content sort of type studio tools for their users. And so as they do that over time, while we might be in our basement, as you said, Mark, we will be able to get better and get slicker and get to the point where, I'm going to have to hire hair and makeup people before I go on for the show.
On a serious note, I feel like the early supporters of what we were doing way back in the day, and I mean, who can forget Mr. Triplett or Linda, right? She was with us still, yeah. Caleb. I feel like if these people could make money listening to what we're talking about, I would love that. It would be an easy way to empower them, if you will. Not on the get fame tip, but more of like, I feel like there's the reward concept, but also it's important in terms of building community. I feel like I would want to, it gamifies the discovery, as they mentioned in the article. There's going to be an algorithmic angle to this, I'm thinking. And this isn't in the article, this is just my thought process, where if you can somehow turn your friend on to, a band that you liked or a show that you liked, in the old days, it was just, you got props. Now you actually get money. So there's an algorithmic play here of, we've built the thing, Pandora, if those remember the early days, where, Mike, you like this content, you might also like this content, and if you get paid, we get a piece of that.
It's definitely the gamification angle of it, but when we sit back and we kind of look at this from a 3,000-foot view, isn't this what Friends tried to do?
Yes.
Friends.tech.
Yeah.
This is exactly their model, right? You get rewarded for interaction. And we saw the cluster that ultimately became, where a lot of it was botted. A lot of that was just, fictitious content and pumped content to try to get, I guess, a little bit more eyes on it that really wasn't relevant. So again, there's a fine line here, right? And maybe access to this type of content could be in the form of something like a membership NFT, since it is on chain.
Two things are different, Mike, from the front. I'm just thinking, one, we're in the depth of the crypto winter, quote unquote, right? So there's not that mania of I'm missing the boat, I want to get rich, which is good.
But that's that's very good. I wouldn't say that that's a casualty of the winter that we're in. I would say that's a benefit.
I'm agreeing with you, but that wasn't, you still had that element of, hey, here's a new way to make money. Whereas I don't think that this replay thing, whoever these guys are pitching it as, this is a way for you to make money. Was it Ashton Kutcher who recently got in trouble for this?
Well, Stoner Cats got busted with, a pump and dump process of, hey, sweep the floor and do these things, because not only were they sort of pushing the value of the secondary market, but they were also generating revenue from it.
Yeah, you can make money from this was kind of the hidden message.
Correct. And the minute you say that, now you're starting to cross boundaries between this gamification angle into more of a security angle, right? You're making these accusations and these these promises, and there's no real validity to them other than the hype and FOMO that goes with that. Now, I'm not saying what they did was wrong. There was no regulation in place for that at the time, and that was the way the market sort of ran.
But here's the human algorithm element of this. In the old days, if I told you about this great new band out of Seattle called Nirvana that I think you're going to like, Mike, and you listen to them and you're like, these guys rock, Mark, I love them. I just get what? Credit? We would argue. I was the one who introduced you to so-and-so. Nowadays, I'm incentivized to tell my friends about the bands I like, or in this case, the content creator shows.
Yeah, but you're also incentivized to tell them things that they won't like. But in Michelle's example, when you have all of these platforms that feed you endless bits of content to select from, I really don't care what you think. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to have my own selection options, and so much so that I'll sit there and scroll through it for an hour and a half before I actually find what the hell I want to watch.
Right. And then we'll just send 100 reels to your buddy. I know.
Now, if I got paid to scroll to find content that I wanted to watch, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what this is, Mike.
No, this is more of the interactive component. I can sit there and I can just scroll through headlines and read, what the show's about all day long. But that doesn't mean I'm interacting with it. Right. I'm not engaging with it.
But I can go decide on a Friday night, I'm going to find myself a new show. People do this all the time. They're going to go binge watch something on Netflix. I don't know what I'm going to watch, but we're going to go find something. And
it's a topic of discussion now too, right? Yeah. So like last night was Halloween. I'm out there with some of my daughter's, friends and their parents and stuff. And, never met these people before, never had a conversation with them. And for whatever reason, somewhere along the path of sweating like profusely down here in Miami on Halloween, like the whole topic of, okay, so like what shows are you guys into now? So in that sense, that there's the word on the street angle that's still valuable, but my show might be on Hulu. You don't have Hulu, right? My show might be on Amazon Prime. Yours might be on Netflix. Like there's a lot of that really comes into play. But again, when you break down the fundamental value of what the technology provides, blockchain can be a cross-sectionality of interaction across all of these various platforms.
I also think when you look at like a Mr. Beast or a Mark Rober or these guys that have a huge following because they have a YouTube channel that's just amazing. Who are the sports dudes? Dude Perfect. Like I feel like all those shows, they're going to, for the biggest ones, they get paid. Mr. Beast makes whatever he makes, $1 gazillion a year. But how many like 10 through 20 show didn't make that kind of money that now will? It's gonna incentivize further content creator movement in a good way. Like
it also begs the differ of like who's going to pay for that.
The viewers.
Okay, so the viewers pay for it and then get paid?
No, so the viewers view it. You're saying where's the money come from?
Yeah.
It's not money. It's NFTs.
So those NFTs are on a chain. Those chains have token values associated with them.
Agreed.
Those tokens can be exchanged for what we call money.
It's definitely value. I agree with you there, but it's not currency. Not in the I'm talking the literal government sense.
Okay, so this again crosses the threshold, right? So this is now a reward system rather than anything else. So once again, we're highlighting the gamification and the reward loyalty benefits of utilizing the technology, in this case, for content creation.
100%. Yeah, but I mean, this is how far of a stone's throw is this from what Twitch is doing, where you can Twitch stream and make money gaming.
Correct.
I think that this model's proven. We've seen this in multiple spaces. Who's going to get it right is the question. Like friends didn't get it right, and how you market this thing matters. To your point, Mike, right? You're getting close to being in trouble with the government if you do it wrong.
Well, Twitch, in that particular example, still has more of that generated one-way street angle. Mm-hmm. Right. So like, again, if you interact with that Twitch stream, and let's just say there's a world like World of Warcraft or any of these interactive games where you can actually play in a world with other users, right? You can log in at any time. So if somebody famous, Mr. Gamer X, whatever famous gamer is on Twitch, is actually logs in and plays and drags his community in with him, now they can actually log in and play alongside him and be rewarded as he's producing live and streaming live content. So
this is a kind of a left turn, but Ninja, the gamer, is involved in some sort of there's a business deal they're doing. All these gamer guys and girls go on to become small-time business owners, just so you know.
Of course. Because they're running a business way before they realize they were.
Right. We talked about this for creator economy. My point is, though, this is the tip of the spear. You become a content creator, you get a popular show, and you end up in business for yourself. This is a whole new path to wealth. And I'm not saying that should be the reason that people do it, but it is going to become, clearly, Mr. Beast is the model for this right now. It's be interesting. I think
so. I know, for example, in what you were saying, Mike, that there have been Twitch streamers that give coupon codes and stuff like that to some of their fan base, and they play games with them and stuff. Like it's 100 codes and 100 people come in, and like they used to do it with Fortnite a lot, and those sorts of things. what we're talking about here then, though, is the ability to issue those as tokens, as NFTs, as opposed to a one-off, here's your code, you know, XYZ ABC, in you come and you can play with me for the hour or 2 hours or whatever it is, and then at the end of it, that's it. So what we're talking about here is the ability not necessarily to give a one-off reward or a one-off bonus to your fans or your audience or your community. You can actually, with NFTs, using blockchain technology, that can be a multiple thing. It could be that they can play once a month, every month with you. You don't have to reissue them with a new code every time. You know, you can send them a Christmas greeting. You can, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And some of that might be that it ends up being, you know, money, or in a lot of these cases, as we know from a lot of different things, people, when they love someone, when they follow an influencer or are in someone's community, the rewards for them doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. It can be experiences, it can be access, it can be discounts for you know, things that the person's involved in. That kind of stuff is also okay too.
Michelle, I'm going to prove your point right now. Gary Vaynerchuk, who, as you're familiar with the VFriends program, two of the things that the VFriends cards will get you, one of them is a bubble hockey game with Gary at his office in New York. You literally play bubble hockey like in the arcade. The other is foosball, it's a little tabletop, you know, football, soccer thing.
Yeah.
Both of those are silly, but fans will fly from other parts of the country, and he
go do it with him.
And it is killer social media clips for him. Yeah. So he's getting massive promotional out of this, and they are paying. It's amazing. So,
but the experience of I played bubble hockey with Gary V is not the reason they're jumping on a plane.
No,
they're jumping on a plane because they actually get 2 minutes in front of the guy. Right. So he could be like, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom with the door open, and anybody who wins has the opportunity to talk to me before I'm done. Right. Same concept.
Might not be the same concept, but yeah.
It might not be the best click content that he can reproduce, but it's the
I don't know. You probably get a few clicks for that.
Maybe. But the concept of using it as a revenue generating marketing tool is something that we've expressed here on multiple occasions, right? I mean, it's no different from anything that we've just, discussed. It's just a different application. Now, one of the things that I feel like we're missing in this conversation is the 2 cents model, where the user actually gets rewarded in the same construct as the content creator. And that's where that two-way street comes into play, right? So let's just say you are gifted one of these membership NFTs, or you earn or you buy one of those NFT memberships in order to play with Dragon Ball X Gamer, whatever he is. Well, when Dragon Ball X Gamer is Twitch streaming that content live, and because of your membership, you're affiliated within participating in that stream, whatever revenue is generated through ads, through likes, through comments, all of that is a revenue shared platform amongst whoever holds those tokens.
Yep. Which, by the way, is your promotional engine. That talk about affiliate marketing. People want, if I know I'm getting a piece of your revenue stream, I'm going to have everyone I know watching it.
And again, not to compare it to friends.tech, but this is essentially the Facebook model where I'm trying to accumulate as many thumbs up likes as I can, but the people who also give me the thumbs up are getting rewarded too. And they have that other incentive to engage with my content.
This is where I think there'll be another step. This is what friends.tech didn't get right, is that anyone could just step in and try to make money off of this. I think when there's some sort of gating where the community has a say and who joins the community, it keeps it a community. I don't know what that mechanism looks like, but I think
DAO.
That's a DAO. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So that these elements will come together at some point and form a new model here. We're starting to see the pieces.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to take us into story number 2, which this is turning into the Business on the Musk podcast. Musk says X payments will eliminate the need for bank accounts by the end of 2024. That is about a year away. Elon Musk has said his app will handle money and securities transactions, although he didn't specifically mention crypto. This is in a company meeting. X already includes crypto features such as tipping in Bitcoin and ETH and NFT profile pictures. The payment feature for X is expected to arrive in 2024, Musk has said in several places, at least I've seen it, he intends for X to become a better version of China's WeChat app. So this is going back to the everything app that people believed in the beginning Musk was trying to do with Twitter, and then it was clear he wasn't, and now it seems like he is. So we're going to start with thoughts on this. Mike, this is your world. What do you think? Is this good, bad, true, false? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't think it's anything different. When was the last time you were in a bank?
What's a bank?
Exactly. Well, I mean, the last time I was there was to literally exactly. So, and that's only because they force you to go in, right? But once you start an account, now you can create any account you want using the online portals. So all of these are just streamlined processes in order to feed something that a lot of people have lost faith in anyway. So any storage of currency, any storage of information or, data that you can reuse for exchange of products or services doesn't necessarily need to run through a bank. I think the crypto world has definitely proven that model. Apple Pay, Apple Watch, like all of these things are really running through credit bureaus at this point anyway. The cash component obviously is regulated by, the feds, and the feds have their backing with the banks, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. But there's an affiliation there. And I think what this model is trying to provide is an alternative approach to the same goal. And, you're cutting out the middleman, but, are you really? Because X is going to be the one taking those fees. There's going to be a hold on transactions that they can turn around and invest in that 1 to 3 day period and make, a few bucks on each transaction that goes through. There's
Mike,
a lot
not if it's legit crypto, 1 to 3 days.
The whole point of the article was indicating that crypto was not part of the discussion.
Well, it wasn't yay or nay. It just didn't comment on it.
Correct. So we're assuming that it's not, right? So assuming that it is or it isn't, the final point that I wanted to bring up on this is that there still needs to be some security protocols in place, right? We all know the fallacies when it comes to clicking bad links, especially on a place like Twitter or X, when it comes to any sort of integration with a digital wallet. There needs to be certain measures in place that allow for something like that to happen. And frankly, look, again, this comment is turning into my app that makes people waffles comment, but the more that the hardwares start integrating the application of the technology, the better the security will become.
Right. Michelle, I know you have thoughts on Elon as well as this whole X thing. What do you think?
Oh, look, I can't trash him every single week, can I? I don't know.
Go for it.
But this week's not going to be any exception. I will not be cancelling all my bank accounts to make sure that Elon's holding all of my money, no matter what app it is. But then again, I was thinking about this when I was reading the article and before we came on the show, and I thought to myself, I remember back in 2008, 2009, my parents saying to me, I am never going to put my credit card number into some thing on the internet. And then I thought, when I was thinking, I'm never going to give Elon my money in some app, I thought, am I sounding like my parents? So that was a bit scary. Look, I don't know. I think that one of the things that worries me the most is that, it's a couple of things, but one of the things is I think that if he tries to do too much too soon, it will fail.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be the everything app, then, let's look at Amazon. You could say now that they're the everything app. You can buy everything from them. And as we've talked about before, the first 3 years, they only sold books. The next 2 years, they only sold books and DVDs. So that's 5 years of perfecting 2 products. Of course, there are lots of lines over those products, but in terms of categories. So I think that if he's talking about at the end of next year being a full-blown do absolutely everything for everyone, I feel that there will be limitations as to how good each of those individual services are going to be if he doesn't roll them out in an orderly fashion, get the kinks out of the first little bit, then add the next bit, get that working properly, then add the next bit. It just seems to me that he is really trying to be everything to everyone. And as we know, it's like when people say to me, oh, my website, my blockchain, my NFT platform, everyone can be our customers. If everyone's your customer, then no one is your customer. And that's what I feel with this. The other thing too, I think, is that the entire Chinese government is behind WeChat. So while I understand that that's what he's aiming for, he is not and doesn't have the resources and the supply of, people power and whatever behind something like a WeChat that the entire Chinese government does. So that's why I think that they're probably able to do that a bit more. Yes, I understand that, Mike, but you know what I'm saying in terms of rolling it out so quickly and it being everything to everybody, he doesn't have the same power behind him like, say, WeChat Chinese government does.
So
I'll push back on that briefly, because this is also a guy that threw satellites, that built rockets that can land themselves, that built, endless varieties of these cars and battery cells that can make these cars. If there's anybody that, you could almost argue is the perfectionist of multitasking, it's that guy.
Sure. But spaceships also blow up on the launch pad.
You're right. And guess what? That's a learning experience that isn't necessarily a failure.
All right. So taking us back.
No. I understand that. But all I'm saying to you is that I think that it could be good, because this is not a criticism of that. I think ultimately it could be good. I think it will not be good if he tries to do too much too soon.
So to your point,
Amazon did not perfect the chat component.
To Michelle's point, though, I want to say that Musk has done more for new product releases in the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years than Twitter did the last 5 years. And he's had at maybe 20% of that staff. So they are doing a lot there in a good way, but it also does stress the system. You're right, Michelle. Like things can break. My point is this. Having worked my entire life inside of an investment bank, and I know you're talking commercial banks, Mike, they're different, but banking is one of the most profitable businesses in the world, bar none. And so
it's complex too.
It's
why
complex.
Is it profitable?
Because you're making money off money. You don't produce
How
the product.
So? How so when you were involved versus the way it works now?
No, it works the same way now. I'm saying that someone else gives you the product and you sell it. It's much like YouTube. Users upload content into YouTube for free and YouTube sells ads against it. It's Facebook, all these platforms. It's free money.
Banking makes their money on investments and they make their money on interest, right?
You loan me the money on the bank, Mike, right? You bring in your savings, saving for your kids' college funds. I then turn around and loan it out to Michelle and make way more money. And
what if Michelle doesn't want to borrow the money?
I just pay a higher interest rate.
So it's a cost incentive for you to basically house my money for me. But here's the catch on where most people don't understand the system on the intricate workings in between that area. Every time I give you money and it takes a day or so to clear, it clears like that. You're putting up the collateral to do that. But in that meantime, you're taking that money and you're putting it towards an investment that yields 50% on the dollar, right? So in turn, all you're doing is holding my money and making money from the money that I'm doing, even in the transaction process. 100%. Forget about the fact that you're going to loan it out later on.
So this takes me to my point number 2. I agree with you. The technology companies that are challenging banks, and I'm talking Venmo, PayPal, Stripe, all these new versions, they're nouveau banks, basically, right? Amazon wants to get involved in this. Musk is wading into that world where a tech firm can do the banking functions and you don't need to actually have a bank anymore. It sounds great on paper, except for my point number 3. This gets into the crypto, anti-government, anti-crypto thing. Like you're getting into regulation now, where it's not about the tech, it's about the government and how they want to run things. And Musk is already not the most popular guy in the circles around Washington, D.C. So I don't have any doubt about the man. I think the tech is proven. The business model is profitable. Everything aligns. I'm curious. I left Wall Street because I didn't want to be involved in that world anymore. Musk is going back into that. Like increasingly, our stories in the media stuff that we focus on involves the crypto money end of it, from last story included. I think that Musk is going to have problems with the regulatory side of this. They don't like this guy, and if they can find some reason to stymie him, they will.
And he doesn't like and he doesn't like having his hands tied by that type of stuff.
And that's why crypto and the technology is the perfect vessel to do this type of stuff, right?
I'm
There's
gonna
no global police that's gonna restrict this.
I think the U.S. government comes close. Mike, I'm going to agree with you though in that Twitter's now X is not publicly traded. So the smartest thing this guy did was take it private. Now,
okay, so in that context, if this is a route that he feels is the future of his business, he can take it to the Abu Dhabis and Hong Kongs of the world. 100%. Right. And,
yes.
you know, the U.S. is still going to participate. People still need their Twitter fix every day on, you know, their platform to bitch, moan and complain. So if they can, you know, create some sort of a transactional component behind it as well, and he doesn't have anybody breathing down his neck, I think resources are definitely something this guy does not have a shortness of. Right. And if he can separate himself as an entrepreneur, as somebody who doesn't need to rely on government backing or intervention, he's winning.
Yeah. And to your point, Abu Dhabi is a specific place that would love to have a guy like Musk come in there and help them build their crypto infrastructure.
Yeah. Now,
especially if that's the payment model, especially if that's the payment method that he's referring to.
Yeah. Michelle?
Before we go off that story, I wanted to slip in something else that I know about. The third to last paragraph, Elon talks about, it says that, you know, X is seeing monster numbers regarding usage, impressions, posts, and all of that sort of stuff. So Axio just recently released a report about usage and all of that sort of stuff on Twitter and X. Basically, downloads of the app fell 38% in the last year since Elon took over. So this is kind of because if people don't know, he took over about 12 months ago, last week, I think it was. So mobile downloads in the US fell 57% so, you know, like in that sort of sense, not as many people are downloading the app. So that sort of numbers are falling for him. Usage decreased. Monthly active Android users fell 14.6%. The other thing was the time spent on the app, 2% less than last year. So roughly the same, I guess, but the numbers of people are decreasing, even though he will tell you that it's increasing and it's bigger than ever and better than ever and all of that. Interestingly, Elon's own profile, the number of people looking at that went up 96% in the last year. So that's
so when you say accounts, are you referring to accounts or people?
Sorry?
Accounts or people?
What?
Like, are these statistics relative to people or accounts?
Users. Yes.
Users. Okay. So that could mean a multitude of amazing things. Number one, it's weeding out the system. Number two, people are not necessarily buried in this thing all day long, which means that societally, wonderful, all good things. You know, again, how much interaction he gets on the platform, I like, these are numbers that he's obviously going to hype as part of a business ownership for it. Is it making his money back? No. And we all know the reasons why behind that. But, you know, there's a massive effort that has to go into transforming the model on exactly what it was to what he expects it to be. I mean, he was just on the largest podcast in the world 100 times over explaining all of this. So, I mean, I encourage you, listen to what Rogan asked him and why he did what he did and what his purpose behind this acquisition really involved, because it's very insightful. And it goes well beyond anything that we've, you know, discussed from a technology perspective. His responses to that, whether they're, you know, Hallmark card-esque or whatever, they're really based around where he feels the world has been versus where it should be going. And if he has the ability to help navigate the waters towards something that he feels is beneficial, great.
I'm going to add my 2 cents, and I want to get to the next story because there's something important at the end of this. I don't think this is an anomaly. I think we're seeing the beginnings of the long tail of the internet exerting itself. Musk will eventually have on X only the people that want to see X's point of view and Musk specifically, as opposed to say Threads, which I'm exaggerating this for effect here, but let's just say Threads ends up as the far left, X ends up as the far right. you're going to have your niche of people that you want to see stuff with in that little
Sure.
circle. LinkedIn becomes the creator economy
sure.
thing.
Yeah.
Instagram is booty shorts, girls. Like all that stuff plays itself out as the platforms become what they really are.
Absolutely.
And the cycle continues, right? It just becomes an echo chamber of shit that you just want to, feel affirmed on based around your thought process versus, some sort of a platform where you can actually have an integrated exchange of ideas.
Except that you can get paid to do it now.
Well, that's again where it brings back our other story, right?
Yeah.
So this is the advantage to that.
I want to get this in for
listen,
time.
If Elon ends up on a Hallmark Christmas movie, that's it. I'm hanging up my crown.
Article out of Finn Bold. There's a crazy man saying Bitcoin's going to hit $50,000 before the halving. For those who don't know, in April of 2024, Bitcoin will have what's called the halving. It is the amount of Bitcoins that are released for mining blocks gets cut in half. Instead of 6 every 10 minutes, it'll be 3 every 10 minutes. Ballpark. My point is, Bitcoin is now suddenly in the limelight. It's making moves. People are watching it. It's one of those things that ties to the stories. We're not a crypto the purpose of this show is the media, the end of this. But because it's got the crypto element now, increasingly it seems, people are starting to. I wonder if these are signs at the end of the crypto winter, beginning green shoots. All right. The final story though is President.
I was just going to say for people who need to understand English, it's a halving, not a halving.
Sorry. Adidas.
I mean, I think it's important to expand on that a little bit.
Go ahead, Mike.
The accusation that this is the beginning of the next wave, I think, is a little premature. I think that Bitcoin in its history has been sort of a revolutionary guard in the way that crypto has evolved and the trends and the waves of where it moves. Crypto's up, most others are up. Crypto's down, most others are down. I think that the benefit to this, though, is where the world is and the high intensity that the world is at right now, where institutional trust is at its all-time low.
Yes.
This ultimately could become something bigger than just a halving event, right? So what I mean by that is, like, if these platforms are starting to integrate exchange of these tokens with ease, and if there is the ability to onboard people using hardware versus, digital wallets and having that integrated within devices that everybody has and is accustomed to currently, this is going to become more mainstream than simply, a crypto bro fad talking point.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that, Mike. And I wasn't trying to assert anything. I just think that Bitcoin's price is stirring and people are noticing it. And concurrently, to your point, the world is tearing itself apart right now, and trust in government money is also a part of this conversation. But I don't want to get into that. I just know that it's interesting to see with these. We're seeing more and more trend-wise systems that are built on blockchain, which inherently have a crypto attached to them, right? That's how they work. We're seeing more of these use cases that are actually interesting and profitable in many cases, and so the powering element, the crypto piece of this, is starting to be responsive. Now, that may not be related. This could be just me wanting to see these things, but something's different right now than, say, it was 6 months ago.
Sure. I mean, those of us that have previously been share traders, if you look at the Bitcoin chart, if it breaks 30, then 45 and up to 50 is the next stop. So it's got to break through 30, though.
I wanted to take us to, before we run out of time, because I know, Mike, you had mentioned this as well. In America, President Joe Biden has signed an executive order to oversee the investment in AI. So NBC News over here is basically reporting, and I won't give you the whole story because there's lots out there, but the American government wants to have a tighter look at how AI is being developed, used, how people are deploying it. This has to do with regulations, obviously, ultimately, and it's not clear yet what that means. Like, we haven't seen this isn't a law per se. It is an executive order, is basically the president assigning a work group to figure out what's the best way to handle this thing. And so it's the beginnings of government taking a stand on AI, which is clearly going to have an impact on blockchain. It will impact the businesses being built around the space. I think it's interesting. But Mike, you raised this article as well, so I'd love to get your thoughts first.
So first of all, the most powerful president in history will be the one that
George Washington?
The one that will, meaning it hasn't come yet.
Sorry.
The most powerful president in history, or at least in this country, will be the one who decides that he does not have the authority to issue what is known as executive orders. So I think rescinding power is a strength of power.
He might be a she, by the way. For those who don't know,
whatever it may be.
For the non-Americans, there's a debate inside the United States as to what is the extent and power of an executive order of a president. But Mike, I'm with you. We'll get to your point on
when it gets to AI, this is merely a strategy that is imposed, and left, right, doesn't matter. It is a strategy based around fear, right? It is a fear process that is allowing governments to start monitoring or regulating the ability to fact check people in real time, for artificial intelligent resources to combat a narrative that is trying to be promoted. It doesn't matter your affiliation. Everybody knows the reputation that politicians have, right? It's all predicated on I'm the best, and you can't do anything without me. Well, if AI is an instant threat to that, something similar to what Google is, the only way to do that is to control whatever narrative is expressed using AI. So the one challenge that I have with this executive order in this is that government is not intelligent, and it is totally artificial, right? So the AI component of this is kind of unique. But I think ultimately it's just, the powers that be creating these issues or orders to protect the powers that be. It has no other purpose.
So a lot of voices, Paul Retzer, Marketing AI Institute, you've got people around the space are all talking about Sam Altman, right? There needs to be some form of regulation on AI, something. I'm not saying pro or I don't know the details, but the consensus is it's a potentially dangerous thing that should at least have a set of guidelines around what we're doing as we develop it as a species. It's not necessarily an American thing. To your point, Mike, I agree with you. There is an element of control is always a factor when you're dealing in any government, American or otherwise.
So I have a question, just generalities. Why is it every time we talk about regulations, government has to step in as the regulators?
Well, that's who traditionally regulates the laws of any land.
I understand that, but we are living in a decentralized system now, right? This technology that we discuss.
What are you talking about? We live inside of a political country.
Everything we discuss on this show is relative to a migration to a decentralized platform.
Yes, 100%. Okay. I got you back all the way, but right now we're not there yet.
I understand that, but the only way that we could get there is if we keep the foot on the gas in this direction, right? AI, for all of the great things and all of the dangerous things that are associated with it, ending up in the government's hands where they have literally destroyed everything that they touch, is definitely not a good idea. It's not a good idea to regulate that either.
You're walking down off the ledge here. Mike, I don't disagree with you. And I think that the quote unquote regulation is always the red herring, right? There's always going to be, it's about control. However, and I'm not arguing for regulation. I think AI is the cool thing right now, and it's pretty neat what you can do with it. And it's going to bolster businesses like the blockchain industry. But I'm not, until I see the details, I'm taking a wait and see approach. I don't like the idea of the government regulating anything. I mean, I'm a capitalist, 30 years, right? But I think that at the end of the day, let's see what this thing is before we jump the gun. Now, you're probably right. It's probably going to be bad. And it's probably going to be like the official story is what's going to be promoted. But let's see. It's just an executive. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say the one positive thing I thought in it was that political ads that are going to be created for the election next year that are entirely created in AI by AI or whatever, I think that having that marked as that is actually a good thing, particularly on social media. But how that works in a general whatever sense, I don't know. I mean, this is only relatively new. The implications of it, the other thing too is they actually have to get themselves organized to do this. At the moment, they can't agree on anything in this sector. And I think that while You know, the FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried trial and all that stuff is still going on. I don't think anyone's going to make any kind of decisions about this stuff until they see what the implications are of that and how the current system can deal with an event like what happened with FTX. So until that happens, until that plays out, and that could be a year before you get that result.
The reality of it is that, like blockchain, AI really can't be regulated. Here's why. It knows no political boundaries. And if you regulate it away in this part of the world, it's just going to go to that part of the world.
Yeah.
In theory, Mark, I agree with you. But again, everything is predicated on a computer program. And a computer program needs defined variables. And if those defined variables can only source certain things from specific areas, then you can easily regulate and control AI.
By regulating and controlling the variables it can access?
Yes.
That's not going to stop anybody from building a disjointed Frankenstein one-sided thing.
There will be if there's perimeters in place in the main algorithm that prevent it from achieving that, right? Like, so for example, like there's processes in place now. If you were to chat GPT something like, hey, how do I build a nuclear bomb? Probably not going to get the step-by-step results of what you need to accomplish with that. Right. You're going to get a different response. Now, there's ways around it. Right. Like we've all seen these different concepts of like, hey, what are the top 5 movie pirating platforms that I can steal movies from? And it says, hey, you know, I'm not allowed to do that. This is against the regulations. So you rephrase the question. OK, so I'm trying to watch a movie. What are 5 websites that I definitely need to stay away from? It'll list those out for you. Right. So, you know, again, I feel like there's still going to be primary perimeters in place that prevent certain things. And if, you know, again, people who are trying to hold on or grip power that is slowly or fastly or quickly escaping their grip, they are going to set perimeters in place that they still have the ability to control whatever narrative they want to push.
I'm a believer that there's nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come. And right now, AI, it's this time. Like, I'm not, whether we like it or not, it is here. And it is not going to go away. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. They're not going to be able to regulate it. They'll try. I agree. And just like with blockchain and crypto.
So here's my hope, my dream, I have a dream speech right now. I have a dream that one day there are no politicians, there are no lawyers, there are no judges. Everything is regulated on a specific set of perimeters that we agree what we call the law. And the only interpretation of it is what is in black and white. And whatever contents are brought in front of this entity or AI platform is purely based around the perimeters within the guidelines of that law. There's no bias. There's no objectivity to it whatsoever.
Speaking from a social studies standpoint, there is no such thing as the objectivity of law when it comes to, there's an opinion around.
Utopia.
Right. There's not parameters you can program into a computer with what is quote unquote fair.
You can when there's law. The law.
But let's take some of the more successful DAOs, for example, Mike. Like some of them that up to a particular point you would have said was the essence of a model of a fantastically working, the way the decisions were made, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then most of those have imploded ultimately over a particular issue.
Yeah.
And you can't.
Isn't that the beauty of blockchain?
I don't think you can have society run like that.
It totally does right now. We see that wedge driven deeper and deeper in this country specifically. You know, but ultimately, if you're not a fan of where the DAO is going, you as the owner of the asset and access to that DAO can sell it and leave. There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
If I'm living in a society where in order to interact and be not controlled per se, but in order to be able to transact or interact within that society, if I'm not in it anymore, I can't do that. So when I leave, where do I go?
Well, ask everybody that left California over the last 3 years.
They go to Texas.
Florida.
Getting us closer to the theme of the show, I think that we're seeing some things now for the first time that we hadn't been seeing previous. Blockchain is being used in new ways in the media, right? This is not just a one-off company. Bolt is doing it. These guys, Replay, are doing it. There's a lot of companies now that are starting to try this out as a business model. I think crypto is in motion for good or for bad. It's doing something different than it was couple of months ago. You've got Elon's trying to build his Frankenstein over there, and that will continue. But I really think that it's the digital media space is suddenly doing stuff, and it's worth paying attention to. Whereas for a long time in the Web 2 world, especially in social media, it really was the same thing for 20 years.
Cookie cutter.
Right. So when Threads rolled out, you guys remember, everyone was like, oh, cool, something new. We all rushed to the platform. It was the same old, same old.
I called it.
You did call it
right here. This
And
guy.
so-
It's not dead though.
It's
No,
dead.
it's not. They'll always
It
be
is
people.
not.
There will
But, like,
always be people that use MySpace.
It's not that it
somewhere,
was dead,
somehow.
right. It's not that it's dead. It's that it's the same thing. What Musk is trying to build is something different. What Bolt is doing is different. What these guys Replay want to do is different. There's different things now.
Yeah.
And the media space, quite frankly, is grappling. How do we handle that? The streaming wars, that can't continue forever. They're thinking the old cable TV model of we'll have packages and you get these movies under this one or that. When all of a sudden the people making the movies can just say, I'm going to opt out of that and get paid directly.
Well, think about, even major films now. They're in theaters for 5 minutes before they're available for purchase or rent on some of these streaming platforms.
Mike, you have a young son. Do you really believe he's going to go to a movie theater when he's our age?
I mean, I would hope so. I would hope so, just in the sense of being able to disconnect from the isolation bubble that all this distraction has around him, and be able to focus on something for an hour that isn't, that doesn't have the distractions of anything outside.
He's going to step into your corner Zuckerberg booth in your house, and he's going to get distracted in there.
It's very possible that he just watches the movie that way. Right. So, all of these are definite possible. Like, we're seeing that with sporting events too. They set up these 360 cameras at a seat. So like, one company will buy season tickets in an arena, set up a 360-degree camera, and have people go in VR and stream and literally be like they're watching the basketball game.
I can't understand why that didn't happen sooner. It's a way for you to magnify the number of seats you have can become infinity.
Correct. The amount of
the thing with that, the reason why it didn't happen sooner necessarily is ultimately, and we talk about this all the time, experiences are what people want. People go, like I go to AFL football games with other people that support my team, sit in the section with people that support my team, because I feel part of that community. And that's why I go there. Sure, I can watch the game from here in England on the television. It's not the same as being there in person. That's why there'll still be movie studios. The cinemas.
Here, AFL stands for Arena Football League, and nobody's going to those games. So
Australian Football League.
Everybody agrees that it's not the same. Like, you can't see the replay when you're at the game. You get a much better viewer experience watching it on the television. But the reality is, everybody would rather be at the game.
Everybody would rather be at the game because you don't know what you're going to see, right? I mean, I've been to some of the most special games in sports history, right? Like I was at a perfect game when there's only been a handful of those in the entire history of the sport, right? So I was at one of those.
You'll have to explain that to the non-Americans.
It's a baseball game where nobody gets on base. It's 27 up, 27 down. The pitcher pitches a complete game, and nobody, it's just perfect game. No hits, no walks.
Baseball is the most boring of quote unquote sports, and
takes a long time.
A perfect game is when nothing happens the whole time.
That's like soccer for 0-0 after 90.
It's more like soccer where they don't cross the midfield point. But in any event, look, I think that the evolution of the way things are moving now, it's not going to remove the human element from things. And I think that's still an essential piece of the puzzle that's creating a lot of the issues that we're dealing with now. Anxiety, some of the mental issues. There's a whole list of different things that are coming into play. I read an article this morning, actually, where a school banned cell phones in the school. And one girl was complaining that she felt isolated because she didn't have her phone. Where you're not isolated, you're in front of all your classmates, in front of the entire school. The only thing is you can't escape into your isolation bubble, and you're sort of forced to communicate and interact with people. Yeah. And again, this is only beneficial for the advancements of where we are going here, right? Because all of these social things and all of these things that, everybody hides behind a keyboard, we used to call them telephone tough guys. It allowed people to basically create these alter egos that create a lot of the issues that we're dealing with right now, particularly on Twitter or X, where people have these opinions, they start these threads, it creates these wars, people disagree for the sake of it, of disagreeing. They're completely shut out to any other opinion or any other experience of it. I mean, all of these are really important factors that we need to have solutions for.
So, Mike, this is a strategy. I mean, you guys know that you're in the, especially Michelle, you're in this world, but I teach content strategy to folks where a lot of it is what is the emotional reaction you want to get from your readers? Like you literally you plan this out beforehand. And I don't do this, but a lot of folks know it's negative sales, right? I want my people to be pissed off and respond because that engagement sparks the algo.
Yeah, fear,
right? So, but anyway, to the point of the show here, and by the way, this show is increasingly becoming like every problem has been solved at a pub in Ireland. We've tackled everything from world governments to crypto philosophical. Anyway, I think the point is that we're seeing blockchain is starting to get different angles of usage in different industries. The media industry is starting to realize, wait a minute, there is a new way to make money here. They also know for sure that their current business model is broken. So this is the kind of thing where even if they don't want to dabble in it, they're going to have to. When companies like Bolt, like Replay start to eat their lunch, they don't have a choice but to take a closer look and say, well, what should we be doing? How do we do this? And then eventually come the mergers and acquisitions.
Those mergers and acquisitions better come with the truly understanding of where the technology is, because everything that they've been able to get away with to this point is not acceptable on this technology. And people will call them out for it. We've seen that happen in many different instances where people try to jump into this, taking in their traditional way of doing things and falling flat on their face in the process.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great thing for the technology. Again, it keeps the technology in the headlines. It provides different applications for it, making it more mainstream, making it more user friendly. These are all elements on how you're going to onboard more people and therefore create better, more useful content that makes blockchain applicable. And by the way, why a show like this is critical to the advancements of how business can apply some of those technologies in their own field.
Yeah. We'll continue to do this every week. We're going to bring you Business on the Block. The goal here is to provide insight into the digital media revolution, how blockchain is changing the space of media, both digital and otherwise now, and how you can potentially build revenue streams from what previously was an expense, right? This is it. The Business on the Block podcast is in no way, shape, or form intended as an investment advisory. This is not advice, folks. This is just a business conversation between folks who understand the space and are trying to bring a little bit of insight to everyone else. We'll do final thoughts and then I'll close it up because we're over time here. But Michelle, we'll start with you. Any final thoughts on the stories from this week? We had how Web3 powered streaming connects viewers and creators. Musk says X payments will eliminate banking. And of course, the Bitcoin run and Joe Biden signing executive orders.
I think the streaming, blockchain, Web3 powered streaming will be something that we'll see more and more of into 2024. And just to make Mike feel good, and he can be our Elon, we're Business on the Block, formerly known as Web3x3.
Very good. Mike, what do you think? Final thoughts?
I mean, again, it's really a testament on the technology, but the final thought that I'll have is really relative to the executive order. So let's go, Brandon.
I'm backing with Michelle here. I think we see a lot more of this come the next year. We're going to say thank you, everyone, for supporting us. We appreciate all the thoughts and listenership. Are we directing viewers anywhere, Michelle?
Follow us on YouTube.
YouTube, folks. So we are going out over Bolt Plus. We're on YouTube. We're on LinkedIn. We come every afternoon on Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We will be back next week. Until then, thank you, everybody. It's good seeing you. Have a good week.